doing certain research for that, it's kind of weird to find out that one of the earliest TTRPGs that are made after Dungeons and Dragons, second edition or first edition, is actually a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TTRPG. Shortly after,
it doesn't surprise me at all. It is. If you asked me, I couldn't have guessed it. But when you told me, I'm like, of course.
Yeah,
of course it's Turtles.
It is the weirdest case for themselves because they got licensed. They held their licensing first for a TTRPG years before they got their cartoon.
A team in TTRPG?
It's a team in TTRPG.
Just Turtle Town.
Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Series needing a spoiler warning will be in the description. This episode was recorded live at Gem State Gaming Convention on July 20th, 2024. The audio didn't come out as well as I hoped, but I hope you enjoy this live episode. And now, back to the show.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Gaming Theater Podcast. Today's episode is going to be a special episode about your not so D&D. What did I title this episode? Anyway, your not D&D, not world things,
Non D&D TTRPG?
Your non-D&D TTRPG. That's a better way to phrase it. Yep, those stuff. So what we're going to be talking about today is Dungeons and Dragons in general is the biggest and largest TTRPG in the world. If you have been paying attention to any of the past podcast episodes, there's things that you can link up to that as far as the Game Boy, Tetris. You can also link up to Might and Magic, Baldur's Gate, and so many various other series based upon TTRPGs. So, if they're all spawning around itself from Dungeons and Dragons as the origin, there's other TTRPGs that exist in the world as well. That being said, quickly we're going to introduce myself and the guests that are here. Now, normally we go into the magical merch booth, but this being a live episode, we're going to skip that part. Alright, I am your host this evening. My name is Yo, I am the Geek Scorpio, and over to my left over here is...
Hi, I'm WG Ashwood, I'm your fancy focus charity streamer, and you can find me over on Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube at Ashwood Audio.
Alright, and over to my right is...
Hi, I'm DandDaine. I feel like I'm still getting the catchphrase. Your friendly local GM, here on the internet, but not on the internet, in person this time. You can find me on Twitch, on TikTok, on YouTube, here in person.
Yeah, and
on GTP.
That slide it in.
Yeah, I'm right here too.
And their right is going to be...
I'm Darien Smart. I'm your host and podcasting muse from Muses of Mythology, Eragon And Back Again, and the Bad Moon's Orbit.
Alright, so that being said, let's get started with the show. As I was stating before, Dungeons and Dragons is the biggest TTRPG in existence. That doesn't mean it's the only one that's out there. There are several different RPGs that are out there, some of them from weird parts all over the place that are out there that may fit your game style better for what you want to do, or that you may want to try. Doing certain research for that, it's kind of weird to find out that one of the earliest TTRPGs that are made after Dungeons and Dragons, second edition or first edition, is actually a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TTRPG. Shortly after...
It doesn't surprise me at all.
It
is. If you asked me, I couldn't have guessed it. But when you told me, I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
Of course it's Turtles.
It is the weirdest case for themselves because they got licensed. They held their licensing first for a TTRPG years before they got their cartoon.
A team in TTRPG?
It's a team in TTRPG.
Just Turtle Town.
It was funny because they wrote down in the TTRPG a mutant Darien, and then there's a spawn-off on it, which inspired a lot of wasteland, a lot of post-apocalyptic storylines that they later wrote a set. There's a set substories.
Can we play this?
Yeah.
You can. It's called After the Mutation or something like that. And then there's a spawn-off on that called Roadhogs, where you play a series of mutated warthogs driving across the United States.
Can we do a Mad Max style one?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry.
Can I be a street shark?
Technically, for this one, you could be a street shark.
Yes. I mean, Venus de Milo.
Yes. The only one you can be in that system is human.
So it could be April.
You could not be able.
Interesting.
Or Casey.
Or Casey.
But you could be smothered.
Yeah. You could. But yeah, so that's one of the weirdest RPGs that are out there. There's other oddities out there, but what we're talking about right now is weird cases for what you want. Say, for example, if you want to do an RPG system where one person who you know is going to lead the group, who's going to lead the rest of the team toward that. Very few RPGs instinctively do that. You have to sort of build your characters and build your storyline around them. Say, for example, if I'm all of a sudden my personality is dominating it, and I is putting us in charge, and we won. There was a design, and I think it was inspired by Cortex, the Cortex system, for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh.
Here's the weird oddity for that. In that game, everybody can play a human character, and they can all build up their stats. In the world of Cortex, it's very story-driven and dice-like system. So if you say your character is the strongest person in the room, like the strongest person out there, you can assign them a D12. But that's part of their storyline, therefore they're allowed to have this dice. And then you would also have bonuses to add to those dice, but only if their story or their background determines it. And here's where it becomes kind of wonky. If you decide to be the Slayer, because there's only one Slayer,
Only one Slayer.
that's at the end of the series that gets changed around. But
Yeah.
for the purpose intended for this game, and this would make in the middle of the series, you can have one person who's the Slayer. They are allowed more bonus point stats at the beginning of the game over everyone else. And they can have an option to use I'm a Slayer as a bonus die.
How balanced is that game for the rest of the players? Like, do other players have other things that are comparable to being like special and getting to do other things, or is that feeling like you're really only gonna have fun if you get to be a Slayer?
So
I feel like if we're going off the show, Giles wins.
yeah. So the way the Cortex works out, it's all story-based. So you have an interesting system that they have there called trace and assets. Faults and assets. Assets themselves are bonuses that you have for whatever sort of that you're working with. Faults is also detriments to yourself that's built as a character for itself. Say, for example, let's go with the Slayer. I am the Slayer. And as the Slayer, you have a bonus D12. So if you ever roll a stat, you roll your base stat, whatever skill's appropriate, like a fighting one, and then all of a sudden you roll a D12 because I'm fighting and I'm a Slayer. You get 3 die to work with. However, you can also put in the detriment, always hunted. So here's where that flaw comes in. A monster's going to fight off your Slayer. Every time a monster attacks you, the Slayer, they get a bonus die. That whatever strength that needs to be. One of the interesting things is that you can use your point, especially character creation. People will add more flaws to their characters to get more bonuses, but they have to even out, and as a rule, they can't contradict each other.
Can I move the monsters?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was very story-based for it. So, like, if you were somebody who wants to number crunchy, who wants to have a lot of dice, you're never going to have that. And it's very difficult to level up in that game.
I feel like it's a really interesting point to bring up. I've got a couple of friends who I know who are fine with the storyline. They like going through an adventure, having a tale told. But at the end of the day, they are there to roll dice. They want to hit things. They want to go to combat. If it's D&D, right? They don't care about shopping. They don't care about the adventure quite as much. They want to hit things with their weapon or with their magic or what have you. And I think that's a very good point. It's finding a system that works for your table, right? D&D, Dungeons & Dragons is amazing. It's a phenomenal system. But it's not, as we've said, the only system out there. You really need to find what's going to work best for your table. If they are narrative focused and really only focused on the adventure and they don't care about combat, that's maybe not something you should even enter into, right?
Yeah.
But if they want to mix, you can find a mix. If they want more combat than not, there's a system out there for everybody. I really do feel like that's true.
Yeah. And there's systems that are designed for like one-shot campaigns. There are systems that are designed entirely for that to be one-shot. Like, I think Monster of the Week is a big one.
No, you could, but not necessarily.
No, the one I'm thinking of is when I played. It was a system called May. Later they did one that was called Shopkeeper. In Shopkeeper, what you do is that you create a character. It's a simple system. You only have like 2 few dice you gotta worry about. You can roll for all your stats. If you want to just really quick roll d6, similar to like Honeycomb, where you would just simply roll a page for it, and a lot of the characters are built on it. The way that game works is that it's designed so that way you are operating your campaign as a shift. So here's the morning shift, here's your lunch shift, here's your afternoon shift, and here is after work shift, and stuff happens. And then what you do as a game master is essentially you pick whatever is the weird problem that's going to happen to this day.
Yeah.
Solve it, not. All of a sudden, one of the plants becomes a vegetable plant, becomes a killer plant. What am I going to do? Option A, I could get rid of the plant and save a bunch of people, or keep it on the counter. It worked for Little Shop of Horrors, so I was going to work for this one, right? I don't know. I just never got to the end of the movie. What happens? It's good, right?
Yeah,
it's fine.
great.
Everyone lives.
They sing a song.
Oh, well, that's
Copyright.
That reminds me a lot of World by Moonlight, which is a powered by the Apocalypse system. Evil Hat is very fun. I've only got to do one campaign for it, but it is, hey, let's all be magical girls.
Yeah.
And you get to decide what kind of, is it we're on the brink of despair, but we can still save the world? Is it post-apocalyptic? We're going to try to fix things. Is it everything sucks and is bad and we're just going to deal with that reality? Put a pin in that. But the arcs of the game, you know exactly what your session is going to be because it's designed to be very much like a TV show. So you have an episode where here's the adventure, here's the mission, you know going into it, like if your game master is prepared for that, it is meant to be, you are going in, you're solving the mystery, you're fighting the guy, you're the villain of the episode, and then you're out, and then the next episode is, you're dealing with whatever fallout, you're dealing with interpersonal relationship stuff, now we're back at school doing the thing, and then the next episode we're fighting one, and so that one is, I've never played a system like that before, that was designed to be like, you should be done with this mission by the time you're done playing today. But it is very fun, especially if you can't get together that often. And so leaving in the middle of a fight or having to I don't know what's going on, I don't remember the last piece of lore we did, it's been 3 months. It's a lot easier to get back into. So, I recommend if your friends can't get together every week.
Well, I don't know if this is a similar base system of the DM that I had, or GM I had for it, just ran it that way. But I have a buddy who's big for Transformers, and he ran Hasbro's Transformers RPG TTRPG. But what's fun about that system is that it is directly connected to the G.I. Joe TTRPG and the My Little Pony TTRPG.
Of course, it's Hasbro!
And the Power Rangers TTRPG. So technically speaking, and then for Free Comic Book Day, they released a supplement that is this in effect. You can have a Transformer teaming up with the Power Ranger, teaming up with the My Little Pony, who's teaming up with the G.I. Joe. And you can run that game together. But this was just Transformers, the game that I played in, and he ran it very Saturday morning cartoon where, hey, Autobots, you show up and they're in the city, you're doing stuff. Oh no, an explosion, go check it out. Oh, it's the Decepticons, who knew? And then you fight the Decepticons and then everything's fine at the end of the day. It's just, and then there are still consequences and, ebbs and flows, but...
We all learned our lesson.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Joe, or whatever.
So we should share. An interesting system I have, and the thing is, I got to play this, but no one's gotten the name right. I believe it's called the Jade system. So the way that the system works out is narrative, origin, stat. So what they do with that is that means that you have a certain tier of stats of the die you roll, and how many dice you have is how interesting it is. Cortex Plus also is a system that plays with it. So let's say I'm playing a character who's also a magical girl, but I really also care a lot about making sure that my high school profile is amazing, and I am the captain of the cheer squad. And so what you would do is you would write a one-word sentence, and that sentence is determined on anything that happens with that sentence is both you get this bonus die that you're rolling, but anything that would be negative for that is you get this bonus die negatively for yourself. So, for example, one I played with was, but the prom is tomorrow! And so, anytime my character would do anything that would be increasing their social status in school, they would get a bonus die for it. However, every time that we have a problem that isn't solved by the afternoon, I I can't deal with this because the prom is tomorrow.
That's very good. Oh, I love that.
So yeah, there's different interesting ones that are out there. One I've always wanted to try, but I have not done. Or two of them that I've always wanted to try, but I have not done. Shadowrun just seems complicated to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of crunch to Shadowrun.
Crunchy, absolutely.
But it's got one of the more interesting systems that I think when you go to urban fantasy, which is a setting that I really like to explore in like novels and things. It's like, what if instead magic was always here and in the background, and you had a troll and a dwarf, and it's just like an elf, and they were all hanging out downtown.
That's my favorite.
Guilds. But then there's ninjas.
Cars. Yeah.
Samurai.
Yeah.
Capitalism's the real enemy.
Yeah, dude.
Oh. So Shadowrun's an interesting system on that one, and but the world of Shadowrun is amazing.
Yeah.
Another one that I haven't done, but I know some people have done, is Vampire the Masquerade.
Well, I did Vampire the Masquerade. God, this is before, but sorry.
Flashbacks.
Yes! Like 10 years.
Who am I?
Oh, the first thing I ever actually played was Vampire.
Roll your frenzy dice. It's a lot of fun.
I don't know if it was 10
Oh,
years ago.
I adore Vampire the Masquerade. I've run a number of campaigns for a number of people both in college and out. And honestly, the new system, their 5th edition, ironically, is the best since their 3rd edition, which I know a lot of people feel the same way about Dungeons and Dragons. 4th edition has middling.
What is this? We're copycatting.
Honestly, right? Like Vampire 3 and 3.5, awesome. Does not use D20s, D10 systems, not related. 4th edition Vampire, most people did not care for. 5th edition Vampire, a lot of people like. Same trend with D&D. 3 and 3.5 seems kind of the goats. 4th, not really popular, though I like both of those. And then 5th edition in D&D has been kind of the new hotness. But no, Vampire is great. It does kind of utilize the flaws and merit system as well, where it's like, oh, well, I'm a vampire who's affected by holy water, or I'm affected by crosses, or I'm affected by running water. It's a detriment to me. I can't cross running water. It's a whole vampire thing. But you get more points to spend on your character. You're filling in little dots. So like you might have a strength of 3 and then take a demerit of 1, which gives you an extra point to put into strength of 4 as an example. Right. That's not quite how it works. It's a little bit more complicated than that. That's the gist of it. And I think that's actually a really interesting system because it does allow you, like, if you have a strength-based character and I have a strength-based character, we might have different focuses on where that strength is being placed and what it's being used for. If you go strength and brawl, which is their fist stat, that allows you to sort of fist fight better than me. But if I go strength and athletics, I can jump stuff, or I can run better, or what have you. And then it's similar. You make a dice pool, you roll the dice pool, successes and failures, and then 5th edition has added a thing called hunger dice, which is where you succeed, but you become more hungry because you're a vampire. I was going to quote Halsey Bridge there, but it's not exactly appropriate. But yeah, you're a vampire, so eventually, if you fail too many times, you get too many hungry dice. Hungry dice coming soon from one. Yeah, but if you get too many hunger dice, you frenzy, which then the DM sort of assumes your character for a time, and you run wild. Yeah, it's like I like that system because you can see it coming. It's not really like being blindsided by it. You're like, oh, if I don't eat something soon, I'm gonna like go crazy and attack my friends or attack somebody else or eat a civilian in front of a cop and he's gonna shoot me or whatever. Yeah, it's a really fun system. I really do enjoy it.
Now, the experiment with systems, that's sort of the gist. There are so many other systems and things that are out there. One of the systems that I've actually got an experiment to try out, and how now I know it's not enough to have it, is the paranoia game system. So the paranoia game system, in its gist of it, is that the game master literally is out to get you. They are plotting that you are going to walk into a stuff and get yourself taken out. And I didn't like it because that's not the style of gameplay I want to play. On the basis of it just felt very like my game master wants to beat me down. I'm just exhausted after that. I don't need this. Not nearly as fun. However, there are some people I've bumped into after talking at different conventions and such. They love paranoia. They love knowing that their game master's out to get them and they try to work around that. I'm like, cool, not for me.
To kind of bounce off that, right?
Yeah.
I feel like not every game system is going to have a through line or a hook that you enjoy, and that's okay.
Yeah.
If you don't like D&D, there are other fantasy games. If you don't like fantasy, there are other genres of games.
That's the point of this
100%.
podcast episode right here.
But to go along with that, right? Not every table is going to be a table you need to play it. Even like if you love D&D and you love combat and you have somebody who's telling a purely narrative story, maybe not the table for you. If you've got if you love narration and they're doing only combat, again, maybe not the right fit. There's no shame in leaving a table, leaving a group with zero hard feelings, just like, hey, nothing against y'all, just not my thing. Similar to paranoia, right? For you, now that you know it, you're like, yeah, not really my thing. Like, I'm not feeling it. I'm out.
I just had this conversation with my girlfriend, whose friends and her best friend is in a D&D campaign wherein it is boiled into a lot of haha jokes, which can be super fun. We're all playing like haha jokes who can make each other laugh, right? And they do laugh, they have a good time, but it's something that her best friend and the DM sometimes gets frustrated by because Fred has invested a lot of time into their characters' backstories, and the DM has invested a lot of time into this plot, and they're just not getting what they wanted out of the game because I'm like, well, did y'all talk about that? Have you had that conversation to set expectations? Because if y'all just want to run wild and have goofs, that's great. I'm just going to bust out a pre-made campaign and let y'all improv. But if you want a story, I will spend a lot of my free unpaid labor making a story for my friends to have fun in.
Yeah.
So
As Ashwood said earlier, like,
setting expectations about what this game is going to be.
Yeah,
Like making the rules for the game, kind of.
And communication, I think, is really kind of like the crux of the issue, right? You talk to your players, talk to your DMs, talk to your GMs, and like, GM, talk to your players. If you're not having fun telling the story, or you open that they're engaging with it the way you want to, don't be mean-spirited about it, but just kind of like, hey, y'all, this is where my expectations were, and we've strayed a bit from that. Is there a way we can tone down the jokes? Or, like you mentioned, if we're going joke city, I'm going to change up what we're doing to more match that.
I literally pulled the plug on a campaign I was running because it was bumming me out so much, and it just wasn't. The same group had just done a Monster of the Week campaign that was like so good and so fun, one of the best storytelling experiences we've ever been a part of, and I loved it. And we're like, let's do another one, we're going to shake it up a little bit, we're going to change it. It was just the bummer zone. Everything was bad, and it was unknown, and I was just like, what is different? And to be fair, it was April, May 2020, and suddenly we're all playing remote with one person while the rest of us were roommates, so like that was an energy, but it also just, we had to sit down and talk about like what kind of game we actually wanted to do, which I think is something I want to talk about for Monster of the Week, is that you mentioned earlier, does your party want to do a lot of narrative stuff or do they want to do a lot of battle? Because some systems are so built for very loose rules, very free reign, everybody gets an input on what this world is going to be like.
And that's important to know. Like, we talked about this in the past episode before, but a big thing that's been going around is a session zero.
Yeah.
So you get a chance to talk about what you want when you get through your session. And if you are a player, this is important, that's a rule that I have for myself personally. I let my game master know I need to know how jokey I can get on this.
Yeah.
Because not every campaign is on that. I ran the Cortex, because Cortex's first system was originally based on Firefly, and I ran a weird Firefly.
Fun.
It was fun. And I was a game master, like, alright, before that, like, I'm just gonna let you guys know, because it was a big experiment we did. It's called a multi-game master campaign. For that, just as a brief insight, every session, one person took over as being the game master, and we wrote the story and kept it going part of it. So, say, for example, Darien makes one section. I got to play off of whatever happened in that session, and then build my session around it.
And not backtrack everything that happened.
All that you have is suck.
Not be like J.J. Abrams. It's interesting.
Yeah, it was rough because the deeper you get in, whatever decisions that other people made, and what the players have made, wreck their stuff. And the reason why this is so important, because I told everybody, I want to have I don't care what all the other episodes are like episodes be, but I need to have some kind of story arc.
Yeah, you agree on it.
And so I did this. And the reason why this is important to me is because because I created a boss which could be only defined as a magnificent bastard. And so, it's a favorite boss, it's also a trope. I want to do an episode on it, but your example of the magnificent bastard is every plan that ever happens, there is no way that the villain will succeed regardless of what your decisions are.
So it's not gargoyles, everything according to their plan as they sit and grovel, right?
Right. No, but it's David Xanatos, where you know what? Is David Xanatos, Gargoyles, the first 5 episodes, I think it is, the pilot, is amazing. And if you go back and watch it, no matter what it is, there is no solution that they have that David Xanatos does not win. Gargoyles do nothing, he wins. Gargoyles fight David Xanatos, he wins. At the end of that episode, Gargoyles fight David Xanatos, he goes to jail, he wins.
So, how do you offset player frustrations when they are not allowed to win at that point? Because I've never run a game like that.
This is where it becomes a lot. This was day 0. I had explained everything. And I'm going to, and the thing with the Ashwoods is, I had to read everyone's character sheets and their backstories and build a boss fight that they couldn't deal with that particular set. For example, we had a high-grade thief. We had 2 research archaeologists. We had 2 other big fighters and an engineer.
Big team.
It's a big team, so how do you compete against that? You compete against that by setting up traps throughout the storyline beforehand that the players know exist, without but also know that that is in character for it. The hardest boss I've ever created, because to make it successful, you cannot logically have any kind of logically have it so that way you can't Deus Ex Machina. And that's the hard part. So I had to read everyone's character sheets so I could build a boss who would be able to do things in 3 sessions beforehand that would plot out so that when they got to this end spot, they wouldn't know what's happening. The crux of it was there was an AI that he wanted, that they have the AI. And so he rigged it so that way he had to give him the AI. And in story, like the thief has pissed this guy off enough that he's willing to just end their thing. And he wants this as negotiation. But the key was they were only in trouble if they kept the AI.
Interesting.
So they had to negotiate a way to get themselves out of it, and then he backed off and walked away. And so they still felt like they were winning. The AI that was almost wiped out, everyone is like on the edge, on the tears. And once the session was over, I immediately asked them, "Oh, guys, are you okay? Are you doing fine?"
Players are so important for big, intense.
And it's so intense, like
GM 101.
yeah, and it's the guy who was playing Thief, my buddy Rob, and he's like, I'll be honest, this is one of the best games I've ever played. Him in character though would wanted to find any excuse to stab my guy.
Of course, yeah.
But he couldn't figure out a way to stab him without getting everybody else hurt, and so he couldn't. And then by the end of the campaign, I had this that way he backed off a lot and then eventually left. Most of it was exhaustion.
Yeah.
There is a thing called Game Master exhaustion.
Yeah.
Playing on that kind of level just takes a lot.
I think we've been talking a lot about campaigns that are really great for setting up big, multi-story, long form. Like we're going to meet many, many times, maybe a whole year of this game and story developing. But there are also a lot of one single paper sheets, arcs, and games. Ashwood, do you want to talk on? I know you've done a couple of these that have been very successful in my personal experience. They're super fun.
There are a lot of one-page sheets like that come out of Grant Howard. We want to shout out one of the big names in the space. Who did Honey Heist? Who did? I believe it's. There's another one where you play as the Familiars. I think it's called, where you play as the Familiars of a witch who's just died. And you're trying to pick up like where she left off and kind of resuscitate her. And so there are a lot of tabletop games out there that are designed to be these one-shots, these short story arcs that are kind of pre-programmed. With like Honey Heist, you're going to pull off a heist. With Familiars, you're trying to resuscitate your witch. And so there are a lot of these stories that are when you're picking that when you're picking that system, you're going, okay, this is the kind of story that I want to tell.
Yeah.
And most of it's pretty right there on the paper. Honey heist. You're not going to solve a giant murder mystery. No, you're here for honey, and you're still steal honey. That's the goal.
I liked the honey heist one you ran last year. We modeled it after convention because it was at the convention. And you want to speak on finding creativity when you're such like a almost rigid framework. Does that feel
Sure.
like you can like in Ashwood as well? With last night was super fun with the raccoons.
So never be afraid to mod your game. Now the reason why I say that is this: I think it's in every copy of the player's manual of Dungeons and Dragons, like on page 1, it says, yeah, if you want to change the rules, go for it. It's important. If you want to house rule something, go for it. There's like
guidelines.
And you have some people who want that strict richness of a game, and fair. I get it. One of my favorite games is this rich strictness of that thing because I now understand the rules, so now I know how to get around it. But I like also creating. So what you do when you have a one-page like that, as a one-page game, there's not a whole lot of rules, which means there's not a whole lot of things that you do. For what I did for that convention is I set it up so that way everything is done in actual chapters. And so what happens is, this is scenario A. How do you guys get through it? You only had enough time to make like 1 to 2 big decisions, and then we move on to the next section. And then we move on to the next section. And the reason why I wanted to do that is so the game kept going.
Yeah.
So there was very little time, downtime to stop and plot. Oh, you want a deep story? Today is not the day. You're going for it.
And Ashwood, was that kind of your experience as well? Is that how you go about your time?
Yeah, absolutely. I love setting goals and essentially things for people to uncover as they play the game. And it's like, okay, you've gotten to this checkpoint in my narrative. Now we can unveil this is actually what's been going on the whole time, or what you think you've been doing has been leading up to this whole new perspective and this like narrative shift.
And you can also adjust it for scale. In the game I was playing with Ashwood, it is specifically a bunch of raccoons going at a house. We don't have to worry about the rest of the world, just this one house. So whatever's in the house, that's in play.
Very exciting things that were in that house.
But, so you never be afraid to adjust your game. This is also true for players, for systems, and for just in general how to play. There is a thing called out there for game design. Actually, this is a big paper that was designed for tabletop RPG makers, and mostly for a board game convention, but it's passed around in every game school and stuff. It's called Aesthetics, Mechanics, and Design? I'm trying to remember what it is. Aesthetics and Mechanics and I forget what the last one is. Anyway, but the point being for this one is different players come in for a different thing on what their experiences. Some of the players out there are known as the role players or the lore. They want a deep dive lore.
Yeah.
So they want big stories. They want to know how the world works. Vampire, with its deep lore, perfect for them. Red wall systems and and such. They want that deep lore. But there's also ones who are very action. They just want to roll the dice. What do I do?
Yeah.
Move on. We go roll the dice. Move it. Quick. And so there's nothing wrong with that one. But they but they prefer a faster gameplay for it. So especially ones like one shots like Honey Heist and such, go for it. They are solid with that one. And then there's ones that, and this is something that you have. There's a category. It's written in the the Game Master's Manual, because they take a lot from this article for it, which is called The Witness. And in the article, they wrote it as abnegation. So what they are is, the witness is the person who came to play the TTRPG, but they didn't come to play the TTRPG. They're the person who got suckered in and wanted to hang out with friends that night.
They just want to vibe.
They just want to vibe.
Buddies. Yeah.
There are a couple of game systems on there that let them coast to just hang out and watch how this gameplay goes through. And sometimes this is one of the funnest things, just watching everybody else go through the chaos.
I had to adapt. I ran a Aegon game, which is is I don't actually remember the system for that one, I forgot the book. But you are basically recreating an Odyssey. You are a team of adventuring heroes from the Greek pantheon. Well, you're not from the Greek pantheon, you're sent into that, but everyone's rolling dice. If you like rolling a bunch of dice, you roll like Aegon, you roll a bunch of dice all the time.
Sometimes you just want to roll a bunch of dice, it makes you feel cool.
And the one time I've actually played it was one time I was running it for a bunch of Muses of Mythology podcasters when we were all in New York together. And so we had people who really wanted to play, and then other folks who just wanted to be part of the energy we were all sharing together, but not necessarily wanting to invest the time and energy because we were in New York and kind of doing other things all day long, other things that evening. But the game is not designed for that. So I kind of just had to, you're Artemis and Apollo, and if your patrons down here need your help, they'll call for you and you can roll them an extra dice. And just kind of work that so they could still be there, and it was worth it. Yeah, it was really nice, and then, yeah.
It sounds like incredible work for like how to include people without like forcing all the character creation and all the like, oh, I've got to be involved in these scenes.
Yeah, and also making sure like the characters who are players who are invested are still able to like feel things flowing and moving without having it get caught up on someone who's sitting here having another conversation because they want to be part of the energy, but this isn't like the main thing they're doing tonight, and that's not bad.
No. The article's called Aesthetics, Dynamics, and Mechanics. That's what the article is written back in the early 90s, but it's almost gospel at this point for anyone who's a game designer. If you're building a game, you want to understand what mechanics you want, what kind of aesthetics you need, and who your target for dynamics. If you want to make a system that requires a lot of dice rolling, go for it.
Yeah.
You've got to understand that there's going to be people who, like, the witness is not going to care that there's 800 dice out
They're
there.
going to be frustrated. You're asking people for this.
Yeah, so many dice.
Why?
One of, like, for example, there's a couple of systems out there, some of them modified it with a fate chart or a flow chart or a disaster chart. Now, me as a game master, and possibly means I may have a gambling addiction, just want to roll them down. Gotta roll them dice. What's gonna happen? I don't know. Let's see what's up. Oh, looks like pandas are coming. Oh no, what are these pandas gonna do? Well, it looks like sit there and lay there. They're not gonna do much. They are there though, so that's now in play. But yeah, so you kind of want to work on which kind of aesthetics and such you want to work with. But different systems are tailored to fit some of those things. The other one I was going to talk about is abnegation, which is a weird one, but there are weird game systems that want abnegation. The most famous abnegation games that you will find are basically AFK games where you leave and they play on their own.
Like Cookie Clicker?
Kind of. But here's a famous one that everyone has known, but they don't think about it that way. Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy, many of the regular battles going through before you get to the boss, you can hit attack, auto, and just ride. And just let them take out the enemies, move on to the next one. Take out the enemies, move on to the next one. Take out it's quick grinding, and you just have to push 2 buttons. But abnegation is the ability to step away and the game still runs on itself. A way we would do that in tabletop is diceless systems. Systems that don't require you to roll a dice, but if the narrative flows this way, then you technically have won because the narrative works that way. It is tricky. I love the idea, but I don't love it as a fan. But again, I like the roll of chaos. I like to roll them dice. And I've played a couple of them. Yeah. One of them is a card-based game for that one where you self-narrate as the story goes to how you get to this gothic disaster for it.
You said a card?
It starts so you get handed a couple of little cards for this game. And the cards start the narration, and you as a player have to narrate which one you go.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Just some
Cards.
Or card.
Card.
Thank you. That is why I was perplexed. You understand?
I get it. Although, I mean, you could make a card game that does that, but it just seems weird.
Crash Bandicoot is a system that exists.
Exactly.
It's car-based.
I feel like.
I threatened my group one time with a road trip and saying that we would decide all of our roles based on what billboards were going up. And so trying to mend this audience, please. If anybody can figure it out, what different billboards mean on a road trip. Just build a game with your players, take a road trip, go play out in the mountains somewhere. It's going to be incredible.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I feel like we've recommended a ton of different things.
Oh, there's a
Trying
ton.
to actually, I know my experience when I've been presented with, here's a new game, especially if it's like a game that like, oh, I want to run this. How do y'all recommend people get into these and approachable? Like, do you have a strategy for like, this is a thing I want to run, and I never have interacted with it personally before, like, because I haven't answered this question, that's why I'm asking it, but it's rude if I just give it first. I'm letting you talk, and then I'm going to talk more.
Okay, so I think we should go down the road for now. So, for myself, it is trusting my game master. If my game master says that this is fine, that's enough for me to actually want to get into it. A lot of some of the game masters are like, hey, this game sounds interesting, and they're like, maybe it's not for you. I'll give it a shot, but I know going in, there's a good chance they may be right. But I'm very approachable that way. I will, but the first time, I want to not be the game master.
Okay.
That's the trick.
Yeah, alright.
I don't want to be the one who's playing, I don't want to be the one who's making the game, I want to be the one who's playing.
Okay.
This is a problem I have currently, because I got my hands on the original Cyberpunk 2077 game. So the one that was built back in the 80s that became the video game now. But there's no, but it's I don't have anyone who's actually played this game, and so I'm having to try to learn the rules, and I'm at page like 20 out of 100, I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
They have a fun system where you can just quickly die roll and make your like, what is it, I die rolled once and I now have an estranged ex-lover who is wanting to be dead, but only for, but still wants to care about me and has a heart of gold. I want to assassinate them. But it's so dang short, I just can't.
Well, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that. I also want to play Cyberpunk and do not want to run it. There's a bunch of game systems that I would like to play and I do not want to run at present. It doesn't mean I won't be able to for it later. I think being open to new experiences and being open to new ideas is kind of key, right? Role playing on its face is very nerdy. Duh, right? We're all nerds here. But we're all sitting around playing make-believe. Like, it's a thing that is very odd to describe, but it's amazing to do. I had the pleasure of playing in a Wander Home game for charity, and it's a pastoral, sort of anthropomorphic animal fantasy setting, no combat. Zero. There are conflicts, but not combat. So, like, I was a bumblebee farmer, and I just wandered the wilderness for a bit. And honestly, like, the person who was running the game did such an amazing job of pulling me into the world that I kind of like lost myself for a little, like for a time. And I woke being like, that's a really nice story. Like, that was really like a Bob Rossian kind of person, right? Where I was like, that is a lovely little tree. I'm glad I was here to see that. And I like combat. I like combat. I think it can be very interesting, very, I mean, Vampire is a story about monsters, right? So it can be very like the antithesis of that. But it was so like at first I was like, I don't know, like bumblebee farming, opossum or whatever. I'm not so sure. And I came out being like, this is incredible. Like, I want to get to that level of being able to tell a story like that has stakes, but no real like danger, right? You feel like there is in the moment, but there's not actually.
Yeah. Check your brain.
Yeah. It was just lovely, honestly. Transformative.
I would definitely say to answer your question is look for an actual play that's out there.
Oh my god, that was my answer too!
There are thousands of actual plays and millions of systems, so there's no guarantee that it's out there if you're picking one that's really obscure or super new. But there's definitely going to be someone who has played something similar to the system. And so if you want to familiarize yourself with it, then look for an actual play. Throw them to some of these podcasts there, and give them a couple of listens and just see how their DM ran the system and see what kind of hurdles they faced and what kind of stories they were telling.
That's actually what I did when I was set up to do Avon, is like, alright, well, who's playing this game? Oh, podcast, thank God. I feel like I said, even if it's new, you might not find it, but I feel like that's become like actual plays, part of like game marketing, that even if it's new, out to like, if I was making a game, I would absolutely be reaching out to Ashwood Podcast and like, if I send you a free copy of the game, will you play game? Please.
And there's newer ones and Kickstarter ones that are out there. There's one that's out there that I got to try out, which is a Liminal Horror campaign. And so we got to explore this abandoned house, this abandoned mall, hotel. It was an abandoned hotel. Sorry, I don't remember that one.
House mall. The house mall.
So
Hotel, yeah.
it's weird because the first game for that is actually an abandoned mall that you play. And then there's a version that instead of doing the mall, you do the hotel, which has a slightly different rule set.
You can't jump in halfway through, man. Come on.
What do you think is more unsettling, a fully abandoned mall or a partially abandoned mall that just has been done for the last decade?
Okay.
Partially abandoned.
Is the rest of the mall functioning as normal?
It's functioning as normal,
Okay.
but it's like there's a shop here that's open, this shop is going out of business.
I feel like an abandoned mall is scary. It's unknown.
I have to deal with the lighting. If you have that light that's not working right, and it's like, here's the shadowy questionable area. I don't like that. I'm out.
Partially abandoned malls would be sad.
Definitely partially abandoned, because if you're like walking through the carcass of a Dillard's and you see like one person moving on the outside, like very on the outside of your vision, it's like they're just going to Spencer's, but you don't know that. That light's gonna be flickering.
And I am sad by partially abandoned, but I am not scared of partially abandoned.
Yeah, there's someone there.
I'm more intimidated by abandoned for me. That's fair. You don't know that person. They could be a zombie or something.
Okay, so now let's say there's
That's a whole different subject. But
Let's get into our next podcast.
Our next podcast.
What's scarier?
now here's the thing.
gas station or motel?
Gas station.
Motel.
I can see your point on that.
I see your point.
Like in terms of actual buildings or like abandoned?
Yeah.
Okay, I needed to know. I was like, I don't really find either of those intimidating.
No, wait, take your show back, please.
Let me take this back real quick. So the reason why I bring this up is Little Horror. It was a Kickstarter campaign. Got to play it. Zombie Hand, who's been on the show before, ran it. She's amazing, and this was the first time she wanted to be a game master, and she jumped at the chance to do that. But she was so scared to do it. Like, don't worry, I'll be your player. I am very fluid. It is so nice to have a player like that. And she appreciated it because what happened is, first session, I got killed pretty bad because she said, poor is on this one, because she set up this large campaign where I was supposed to find my wife, who I've been searching for years and years, has only to find this, and here's what I did. Ooh, mushroom on the wall? Oh, man! The whole campaign is gone.
Don't put things you don't know in your mouth.
Okay, so
That's rule one.
I, however, she's like, after the game was done, she talks to me and goes, oh no, are you sad? I'm sorry that I had to kill your character, but like the rules say that I did not. And I'm sitting there like, you did it, it's fine, let's do this. It is great to have that kind of fluidity for that. And it's important because my next character, and I asked her if I could do this because my next character tried to talk to a demon and sell him on an MLM I was building. Because that's me, baby.
I think it is so important, like getting to playing something new with your friends, trusting your friends, and then also if you're playing a new thing that your friend has never run before, like giving your friend grace.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Like the first thing I did, wrote my Moonlight. I was with a very experienced DM, Dalton Montgomery, who's my co-host on Bad News Orbit, and he's an incredible. I've heard stories even before I met him. I heard stories about his incredible campaigns, right? And then I'm like, you're the goblin guy. And so our first Robot Moonlight session was kind of rough. And it was like, everyone kind of left and was like, do we want to commit? Like, spend a lot of time on character. And this was like, the world is fun. Like, that wasn't. But we weren't mad at Dalton. He was like, okay, guys, don't trust me. I'm going to go back, I'm going to listen to some stuff, I'm going to figure this out. And the next one, you just have to get into a groove. Like, even as a player, just getting, like, having grace for even if you're like strangers in a space, just getting together to play this game at a convention. Remembering everybody's goal, I feel like it's a good goal for life.
It's also not a bad idea to remember that sometimes a fun homebrew is, but they also get, be careful with homebrews on the basis that they get kind of experimental. You know that going in. But everything started as a homebrew at some point. That's even Carrie Gunnis, Dungeons and Dragons started as a homebrew on a
Trade.
Yep. So
We talked about a lot. What is your favorite non-D&D one that you have played, or maybe one that you really want to play?
Did for us.
I have a question. I need this last.
I'll go first.
All right, Dave,
I'll
go
go
first last.
So I'll go first because this is my buddy gave us a friend, Rob. He took Cortex Plus and Cortex and glued them together to make a better version for it. Not better. It's just better for what I wanted to play it. Because Cortex's original version is very much more dice rolling. It made sense as a D20 system. You know, the point being is like as a die roll system. Cortex Plus uses a more narrative system for it, but the narrative system gets kind of wonky. And there'll be an episode where I'm going to talk about tabletop RPG games that were what do you call it when it's from a franchise of some sort of like intellectual property tabletop RPGs. There's a series of them. Here's a short bit for it. The first stuff that they did with Cortex Plus was with Marvel. And so, for an example, Marvel, they made all the characters that you had to do, they had like a phrase that's tied to them. So Wolverine, for example, would be, I am the best at what I do. And what I do isn't nemesis. And so here's the thing with that. The best that I do means that anytime it's a combat-based attack, Wolverine by default will have bonuses for that. Every time that there's a socially based thing, Wolverine will have faults of problems for it. Now here's where it becomes wonky. The game is purposely designed so unless you use an official Marvel character, you can't. You automatically start with detriments as a manually created character.
This one's not one that's great for homebrewers.
This is not great for homebrewers. Yeah. So the design for that one is, I want to make my own Marvel character. You can. You are coming in with a handicap every time, and that's just how that system built up. But he loved the aspects for it, and so he glued these aspects with these aspects together. And he has a thing that he does called plot points. Which was in the original Cortex, but not Cortex Plus. So plot points is you do some things, you earn this little point. Oh no, you're in trouble? You can choose to basically take the amount of plot points that you have and like, hey, Game Master, what if that what if that guy I'm talking to happens to be my best friend? You slide him some of these plot points to pay him off.
Yeah.
Driving the Game Master. So that was my favorite, and he's got that thing perfected to a science now.
I would definitely say my favorite is Call of Cthulhu, which has a lot of problems to its system, but it all comes back to when you set expectations in a game of Call of Cthulhu, your players know that their characters are going to go through something wild, something horrific, and so you can get into that like horror mindset. It's like things are going to get weird. We're going to go through that together. And so when I'm like game master for a Call of Cthulhu game, I have these settings on my smart light set, so it's like as soon as I click this button, things are going to go blue, things are going to go green, the horror is going to come out of them, and we're going to change the entire environment. But my players are expecting that. It's not something that's going to create any cognitive dissonance. It's something that they're going to jump with and that they're going to be very excited for. And so it all comes back to picking that system that sets expectations. So, I just love Call of Cthulhu for its like horror elements.
I think my favorite currently is going to be Go by Moonlight. Like two factors of it. One, I like in the system the player is the director, or the GM is the director, and part of their director rules is you are a fan of these characters. You love them so much. You want the best for them. I think that makes you really invested, and that's great. But I also like how it is collaborative storytelling from the base up. Session 0 isn't just what kind of magical story do we want. It's everyone talks about what does our team look like, what does the theme look like, what is the point of what we're trying to accomplish, and then so it also every player character gets to create 2 NPCs, just right in anchored to them. Like I had a secret, won't get into it too much, but one of my NPCs was just a tabby cat. Just a tabby cat. It's just around. He's called the cat. Did I do this because my cat had just passed away? And I was like, no one's allowed to take the cat from me. Yes, I did. But it was so cool to see this game. It wasn't just like my buddy Dalton, who's a great storyteller, invented a game, or in Monster of the Week, which I love. By the end of it, it was still the world that I had built, populated with characters and decisions that the players made. And it still felt like my thing. Girl by Moonlight felt like something that none of us could have created alone, and truly this thing that we all breathed life in together. So I definitely recommend it for if you've got a group of experienced players who love telling stories, and probably, honestly, if I've been GMs in the past, this is maybe one of the coolest things to all pull your creative resources together.
I really love systems that allow you to sub-create, maybe even forces you to sub-create with your fellow players and fellow game masters and whatnot. I think that's incredible, honestly.
Yeah. It was better than anything I could have come up with alone, and I'm pretty damn good at what I do.
Apes stronger together.
Yeah! The real magic is the friendship we made along the way!
I think for me, Cypher, Cortex, both good systems. Vampire's awesome. I really do enjoy that. But it's not a game for everybody. One that I really had a lot of fun with, that I haven't played or haven't interfaced, the newest release is the Hero system. And they had a 5th edition revised, which was lovely, called Fred, which is a D6 system. And basically, you had a number of points, and you were able to build custom superheroes. So unlike with the Marvel system you mentioned, where if you weren't playing a normal superhero from the Marvel property, you were disadvantaged. This was like, I really want to fly, but I also want to be able to shoot lasers out of my armpits. You can then sit down, and it's a very crunchy system, so it's not necessarily for everybody. I don't know how I feel about it these days. I'm not such a crunchy gamer, but it's very nice to be able to be like, this is how you do this power, this is how you do this power, and your point total is this, so you can make those 2 powers, but nothing else, right? You're like an average person in every other way, but you can fly, you can shoot lasers out of your armpits. It allows you to really custom tailor it. So I don't know if this is just the flavor of the person who was running the game at the time as I was playing it, or if it is actually how the system works, right? I didn't get a great look under the hood, but I had a character who had a bunch of rune-focused powers, and he allowed me to build out specifically, this rune does this power, this rune does that power, and I would just draw them randomly from a bag of runes that I had. It felt really cool.
That is fun.
Yeah.
Games are fun.
Play more
Everyone
games.
should play more games.
Play
Play all of the games we talked about today.
And play D&D too. Try tabletop games, and if it's not for you, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay not to play tabletop role-playing games, but be open-minded. Give it a shot.
Yeah. I think that's about all I've got going on for this one. So, that being said, I believe this is the end of this particular episode. Catch us on the regular podcasting days, or the regular podcasting time, and this is Gaming Theater Podcast, logging out. Bye, everybody!
Toodles.
Does anyone have any questions? Questions from the audience?
All right, I did it.
Yeah. No questions. They understand everything.
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio. Our music is A Drinking Game. Stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some money to help with these episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.